Right now, on to the point.
A California lawmaker is hoping to secure $400 million to fund Prop 36 as the state faces a deficit.
Big city mayors at the state capitol today with a big ask for homeless funding. Their message for the next California governor. A major verdict against big tech, Meta, and YouTube found liable for harming children. Now both companies are pushing back.
We're talking about taxes. Nothing is simple.
And a closer look at the tax breaks and why some of them may come with strings attached. Well, as the state faces billions in a budget deficit, one California senator is hoping to put more money into Prop 36. Thank you for joining us. I'm Alex Bell. Prop 36 is a voter-approved measure that would increase penalties for certain drug and theft crimes. ABC 10's Jeannie Nguyen is here to share how this would work and also how the Sacramento County Sheriff's Office is responding to all of this tonight.
Alex, Republican Senator Tony Strickland is asking the state legislature to commit $400 million to Prop 36, arguing that Governor Gavin Newsom does not prioritize it, even though voters overwhelmingly approved it. Sacramento County Sheriff Jim Cooper tells me he's supportive of this request and hopes the legislature can make it a reality.
It's a whole accountability piece of the initiative. So I'm looking at every avenue possible to keep this and try to get this fully funded.
As a strong supporter of Prop 36, Republican Senator Tony Strickland says it's time the state deliver its promise to voters. It was approved by voters in 2024 and would add more penalties for certain drug and theft crimes. He sent this letter to Democratic Senator John Laird, the chair of the Senate Budget and Fiscal Review Committee, to ask for $400 million to fund the measure for the next budget year.
I think the most essential role of government is public safety. We need to get law enforcement the tools they need to keep us safe.
Governor Gavin Newsom has been an open critic of Prop 36 and committed $100 million during this current budget year. During a press conference on Wednesday, Governor Newsom doubled down on his criticisms.
There was just a survey done by the courts. It's worth reading. They should actually read it, some of the advocates, that highlighted the success, the failure of Prop 36. And overwhelmingly, no one was talking about the need for more resources.
With the state facing a budget deficit in the billions, analyst Chris McKaylee believes a $400 million ask will be difficult moving forward.
Prop 36 itself lacked a funding source. It didn't specify an amount from the general fund. It didn't impose a new tax obligation. So every year, the proponents of Prop 36 are going to have to fight for a budget appropriation each and every fiscal year.
Even though funding isn't promised, Sacramento County Sheriff Jim Cooper says he welcomes the extra money because Prop 36 is already working.
I support it 100%. Everyone in law enforcement supports it. We need the money to try and do that. Has it made a difference? Yes, so far, without having the money. We noticed that our thefts are down and the bad guys talk about it amongst themselves, that they're being held accountable.
Democratic Senator John Laird is the chair of the Senate Budget and Fiscal Review Committee. I asked him for an interview and comment on Senator Strickland's request for more money to fund Prop 36, but he declined, Alex.
All right, Jeannie, thank you. And let's go back to Sheriff Jim Cooper. Tonight, strong words and a new push from the Sacramento County Sheriff. Take a listen.
I'm fed up. I'm frustrated. It has to change. We have to put victims first.
Sheriff Cooper launching the new ballot initiative, Protect Our Kids Reform Prop 57. He says it would block sexually violent predators from being released under elderly parole laws. The move comes after recent cases that we've been following in the Sacramento region involving convicted predators being considered for parole. The sheriff says that this isn't a political issue and that every child deserves protection. Once signatures are collected, the measure could go on the 2028 ballot, giving voters the final say. Today, a bipartisan group of mayors from the state's 13 largest cities met with the governor and other state leaders to ask for more homeless funding. The mayors are warning that without that money, more than 40,000 Californians could lose their homes again. ABC 10 State Matters political reporter Jenny Hub breaks down the discussions.
When the states invested in this program, our cities have delivered.
A plea by the leaders of California's largest cities for continued funding of the state's Homeless Housing Assistance and Prevention Program, or HAP, launched in 2019.
These cuts put critical programs and real progress at risk, sending the message that reducing homelessness is no longer a priority for the state.
HAP funding is delivered via rounds. Round one was $650 million, then $300 million, then $1 billion for 4 consecutive years. But with the state budget deficit, it got no funding in the past budget and only half of what was promised in this year's budget.
Anything less than $1 billion really does mean that we'll be closing shelters in our respective cities.
The mayors are asking for the remaining $500 million as well as a commitment of $1 billion annually moving forward, saying cities are making progress with the state's financial support.
Without HAP, that progress disappears. It is as simple as that.
The mayors say through HAP funding, cities which are on the front lines of fighting the homelessness crisis reduced unsheltered homelessness by 9% statewide, served over 330,000 people, added nearly 9,000 shelter beds, and nearly 3,000 permanent housing units. We asked Governor Newsom, who met with the mayors.
They've never had this kind of investment that provides the kind of resources. As it relates to the request, I cannot in good conscience provide any additional resources or argue for them with the legislature. If you have cities like LA that are violating state law, SB 79. I mean, you don't build, we're not going to fund, period.
SB 79, which has put Los Angeles at odds with Sacramento regarding state versus local housing control. The bill signed by the governor allows for denser housing like apartments to be built near major transit stops, which the city of LA continues to fiercely oppose. In Sacramento, Jenny Ha, ABC 10.
And Governor Gavin Newsom is getting tough on housing. Politico reported, and Governor Newsom reiterated today that he told 15 cities and counties in the state that they have one last chance to comply with state housing requirements or face legal action. The State Department of Housing and Community Development told local governments that their housing blueprints must include plans to build residences for all income levels. The areas that are in our region on the governor's list include Escalon, Oakdale, Patterson, and Turlock. California lawmakers are pushing a series of bills aimed at expanding paid pregnancy leave, improving access to health care, and making childcare more affordable. The Legislative Women's Caucus announced 14 priority bills they want the governor to sign this year. The caucus, made up of 59 female legislators, is focused on pay equity, health care access, and childcare support. One proposal would give educators up to 14 weeks of fully paid pregnancy leave. Another would expand access to child care for families and boost pay for providers.
And in other words, pregnancy and family formation are colliding with affordability and the responsibilities of daily life. Pregnancy at the age of 35 years old or older is associated with higher risk of adverse pregnancy outcomes. So as more births shift to the mid to late 30s, access to strong prenatal and maternal care become even more important.
Senator Wahhab's bill was reintroduced after being vetoed by the governor last year. It seeks to make pregnancy a qualifying life event so that mothers can get insurance or get better insurance during that time. Still a lot more news ahead. A major verdict today in the trial against Meta and YouTube. Tonight, reaction from the social media giants. And that tax deadline, it is approaching. What you need to know about the changes, deductions, and who qualifies for the new tax breaks.
And tomorrow, a little cooler. We may not even hit 80 in Sacramento tomorrow. We will be back in the 80s for the weekend, but I've got a much bigger pattern change on the way next week, and the forecast is on the way after the break.
But first, on other headlines tonight, Washington Unified School District teachers will not go on strike. After more than a year of negotiations, they reached a tentative agreement with the union. Details of the deal have not been released, but it comes after a second fact-finding session between district and union leadership over a month ago. Teachers had voted to go on strike if a deal couldn't be reached. You may start to see faster shipping choices from your favorite stores. FedEx announced that it's launching a same-day delivery service for retailers. It offers a 2-hour option and end-of-day delivery. FedEx partnered with a company called One Rail, which will handle the quick deliveries. And Savannah Guthrie is returning to the Today Show, but on the other side of the interview table. A conversation she taped with Hoda Kotb will air Thursday and Friday. It's Guthrie's first interview since her mother went missing nearly 2 months ago. One insider says that she is expected back in her anchor chair sometime next month. Well, our weather is going to be shifting a little bit. We've been pretty hot, but Brenda, now we're going to start cooling down, which will be nice because I really don't like to run my AC, as I always bring up.
It is going to be a big difference in the not too distant future. Today was cooler. In fact, we didn't even tie the daily high temperature record today. Made it only to 82 in Sacramento, 83 Stockton, 84 in Modesto, still upper 60s in the high country. I say only because, you know, even though we've been cooler than where we've been for 11 days, right? We still are 15 degrees above where we should be, and we still made it into the 80s. So this stretch of 80-degree heat continued today. This is now 11 days in March with a high temperature of at least 80, and it's 11 days in a row with a high temperature of at least 80, and both of those are new records, which we are continuing to add to. We could add some more tomorrow, but we might not. We'll get close to it. I'll show you in a second. Winds right now onshore, mainly in the Delta and San Joaquin Valley, about 15 to 20 miles per hour. Gusts are not that strong, maybe 20 miles per hour in some places. You can see where the wind is not. That's where temperatures are still warmer. 77 in Sacramento, 78 Vacaville, 82 in Marysville. But then where we have that onshore wind, it's 73 in Fairfield, 75 in Tracy, 79 Manteca, 78 in Stockton, and low to mid 60s in the high country. As we go into Thursday morning, winds are going to be picking up out of the north, and temperatures are going to be right near 50 degrees, upper 40s to about 51 in the valley. Thursday afternoon, the coolest day this week. My forecast high for Sacramento is 79, 80 in Elk Grove, 78 in Stockton, 79 Tracy, 79 in Modesto, 80s in the upper valley. So again, if we don't get to 80 tomorrow, that streak will come to an end. But we are going to add some more 80-degree days as we head back into the weekend. Friday, Saturday, and likely Sunday going to be in the 80s once more, regardless of whether or not we get there tomorrow. Here's a look at those winds developing out of the north overnight, continuing out of the north all day long tomorrow, strongest in the Sacramento Valley. Gusts could be up to about 35 miles per hour for areas north of Sacramento. From Sacramento to the south, gusts are going to be 25 miles per hour or less. But that high pressure finally moving out, that's going to allow for a wholesale pattern change to develop. So 80s through the weekend, but then next week 60s. Chance for rain in the valley, chance for snow in the high country. Alex?
All right, and don't forget our ABC 10 Weather Impact team is always here for you 24/7 to get the latest conditions anytime. You can check out our live 24/7 radar on our free streaming app. All you have to do is just scan that QR code right there. All right, right after the break, the partial government shutdown is stretching into its 40th day, and it is hitting travelers hard with the political standoff only intensifying. And then a little bit later, a rare glimpse of California's governor, the surprising emotional moment during a press conference. Now to the war in Iran. The United States is looking for an agreement to end the war, sending a 15-point peace plan, which Iran reportedly rejected. Meanwhile, Iran is firing more strikes across the region. Israel says an Iranian ballistic missile landed near a major power plant. Another blew up near an airport in Kuwait. Iran still insists no negotiations are going on, but has a list of demands, including a halt to assassinations and control of the Strait of Hormuz.
Iran's proposing things that the United States is never going to accept. We're not going to remove ourselves from the bases in the Middle East. We're not going to pay the Iranians reparations for this air war. It's just not going to happen.
The Pentagon is preparing to deploy up to 1,500 soldiers from the elite 82nd Airborne Division to the Middle East. The soldiers are trained to parachute behind enemy lines.
This is a dire situation. We are facing a potential perfect storm of severe staffing shortages and an influx of millions of passengers at our airports for the World Cup games in less than 80 days.
Yep, Congress is at a standstill for 40 days now, with the Department of Homeland Security still shut down. The TSA says this shutdown has led to the highest wait times in the agency's history. Democrats have refused to fund DHS over immigration enforcement tactics. Senate Minority Leader Chuck Schumer rejected the latest Republican offer, which would remove funding for parts of ICE, but does not include the policy reform the Democrats are asking for. Democrats today sending a counteroffer, which was also quickly rejected. The TSA is warning this shutdown could have long-term effects even after the government reopens, with more than 400 TSA agents quitting since the shutdown began. The White House says that it is not ready to nominate a new director for the Center for Disease Control and Prevention, also known as the CDC. The Trump administration had been expected to nominate a new director this week. A federal law called the Vacancies Act limits the amount of time an acting officer can serve in place of a Senate-confirmed official to 210 days. Thursday will mark 210 days since the most recent CDC director, Dr. Susan Menares, was fired by HHS Secretary Robert F. Kennedy Jr. An HHS official says that the agency is looking for new candidates for CDC director, as well as continuing to weigh some of those who were already under consideration. A jury today reached a verdict in the case against Meta and YouTube. The Los Angeles jury found the social media platforms liable for causing harm to children using their platforms. The plaintiff in the case is a 20-year-old woman, testified describing what she calls addiction to social media that began when she was just 6 years old. The plaintiff's attorney speaking out following the verdict.
This message is one that's important to Kaylee and her family, but it's a very great importance to a generation of people who have been affected.
Google, the parent company of YouTube, says that they will appeal, saying the case misunderstands YouTube, which is a responsibly built streaming platform, not a social media site. A Meta spokesperson said that they disagree with the verdict and are evaluating legal options. The sweeping tax bill passed by Congress last year promised big breaks for millions of Americans, but tax experts say that it's a little bit more complicated.
With the great, big, beautiful bill, we gave you no tax on tips, no tax on overtime, and no tax on Social Security for our great seniors.
At the State of the Union address, President Trump declared an end to some taxes.
And I yelled at my TV again because I keep telling people the president and his officials mentioned no tax on Social Security.
And no tax on Social Security.
And I went, boo, that's not correct. That's the enhanced senior deduction. It's got nothing to do with Social Security.
Certified public accountant and tax expert Larry Pond says it's not true that the new laws eliminated Social Security taxes. He says seniors will still have to pay Social Security taxes based on their income under brackets dating back to 1983. However, the new law lets seniors over 65 deduct up to $6,000 per year, whether they get Social Security or not. That could reduce their overall tax bill. Not everyone, though, can claim the full amount. Singles with adjusted gross income up to $75,000 and married couples with income up to $150,000 can get the full $6,000. But after that, the deduction gradually phases out. Singles with income over $175,000 and married couples with more than $250,000 get no enhanced deduction.
We gave you no tax on tips, no tax on overtime.
That's true. Like anything else, you're going to meet certain conditions here.
So let's take no tax on tips.
It only applies to voluntary tips. You know, when you can choose how much a tip is.
All kinds of workers can now escape taxes on their tips. Waiters, bartenders, Uber drivers, hairstylists, and hotel maids. But there are limits. Tips don't qualify if they're mandatory. For example, if a restaurant adds a tip for large parties, it's not deductible. Service fees also don't qualify. Owners of businesses like hair salons cannot deduct their tips even if they provide the services. Deductions are limited to $25,000, and workers must have a Social Security number to claim it. And what about no tax on overtime? Well, it's complicated. Under the law, overtime means working more than 40 hours per week. Part-timers can't deduct daily overtime unless it meets the 40-hour rule. Also, generally, the deduction applies to unscheduled overtime. So, many police, firefighters, truck drivers, and others who work extended shifts by contract won't get the tax break.
And we also made interest on auto loans tax deductible the first time.
Yes, there's new relief for car buyers. Car loan interest is now deductible if the car was assembled in the United States, if it's for personal use at least half the time, and if it's a new car with a new loan. Used car loans don't get the deduction.
Nothing as simple as it sounds, right? We're talking about taxes. Nothing is simple.
All right, a lot to break down there. Coming up, a rare moment from Governor Newsom, what brought him to tears at a press conference today. One more thing to share tonight on To The Point. During a press conference on helping young men build job skills, Governor Gavin Newsom became visibly emotional. Take a listen to this rare moment.
Forgive me, this is embarrassing. You can turn all that off. Just because all the noise, that we just need to turn off. And listen to this. This is it, man. This is it. You want to fix all this stuff? This is it. Listen to these guys. You know, we're all just sitting there yelling and screaming at each other. Everybody's getting each other's throats and trying to tear everybody down. And, you know, how are we going to get out of this? This is it.
That moment comes as the governor kicks off a push to recruit 10,000 young Californians into the state's service corps, the largest in the nation. It's even bigger than the Peace Corps, with a new effort focused on getting more young men involved. As always, thank you so much for watching and for always inviting us into your home. If you have something you think we should be looking into, you can always email us at tothepoint@abc10.com. Have a great night. I'll see you tomorrow.